building inside monuments, raiding with torches, fighting zombies and mutant animals. All of that was in Rust over 10 years ago. Back then, it was a completely different game with only one goal – to survive as long as possible. In this video, I'll take you back to the early days of Rust to look over how the game has evolved and show you 25 things that you would only know if you're Rust OG. But before that, write in the comments below what gaming mechanic or feature you miss the most. And now, check out Rust Clash. Rust Clash is a platform in the Rust community, known for their case battles and a bunch of different game modes where you can face off against other players in intense PvP openings. They also have a bunch of different game modes, like Tiles, Plinko, Mines, Crash and the classic Upgrader, each with their own style and pacing. Whether you're uncovering tiles, watching the multiplier climb, or chasing a 10,000x Plinko ball, there's always action. And now, let's get back to the video. To make it easier for you to follow, I've decided to separate Rust into 3 timelines. First, we got Rust Legacy, which was the first version of the game. Next, we have Rust Experimental, which is basically the early version of the current Rust. And lastly, we have Rust after the official release. So let's begin with Rust Legacy. One of the best features of the game back then, and something I really miss, was the mutated animals and zombies. Every monument in the game used to be protected by at least a few zombies and red animals. These could have been wolves or bears, or maybe even both. Inside them, you can find valuable loot and even weapons, which was really cool. By the way, zombies back then were insanely fast and powerful, so they were a real threat. For me, surviving in a world of zombies and mutated animals is much more fun than surviving in a world of NPC bots, patrol helicopters and safe zones with turrets. To be honest, I don't understand why the developers gave up on the original idea, but maybe it has something to do with the lore of the new Rust. Next, we have the legendary Kevlar armor. Why is it legendary? Because you look like a gopnik in an Adidas suit. That's why the developers want to bring these clothes back into Rust. But jokes aside, at the time it was the best set for PvP in the game, so I'm really excited to see what it will look like in the new Rust. The same goes for the M4 rifle. It was one of the best weapons in the game back then, but now it's a stupid shotgun that nobody uses. Of course we have an LR, but it's a completely different weapon. That's why the developers are also planning to bring M4 back into the game and call it an M16 rifle. Let's hope it will be at least the same as an AK right now, or maybe even stronger. Next, I want to remind you about one broken mechanic in Rust Legacy that was both a curse and a blessing. I'm talking about water. Water used to be deadly, in the literal sense. The slightest touch of water meant instant death. On the one hand, it was really bad. But on the other hand, it allowed players to build unraidable bases on the water, using barricades and building blocks, but it was insanely difficult. Anyway, I'm really happy that water is a completely separate biome right now, with its own monuments, ecosystem, boats and ships. Now, let's move on to the old Rust. One of the most iconic symbols of that era was the giant wolf monument. If you were playing Rust back then, I'm really jealous of you, because I didn't have a good PC at the time, so I kept playing Rust Legacy and missed all the fun. Anyway, this giant wolf wasn't a real monument, because there wasn't any loot spawned, but it was insanely huge. I think it would be a great idea if the developers made a small wolf statue and put it in the cave like an ancient artifact, to pay respect to the early Rust. Next, I'll show you some of the most unique features from the game back then. One of the most broken metas at the time was building on top of the dome or satellite dishes. Yes, you heard me right. In the past, you could build your base right inside or even on top of monuments. Players completely block the dome with walls, build custom staircases and climbs, and set up several bases, one at the bottom of the monument and another at the very top. Unfortunately, this mechanic didn't last very long in the game, because it was too overpowered. But that's exactly what all the players look back on with a smile. Another crazy building mechanic from the old days was a TC Without Upkeep. You could build a massive castle with lots of towers, gates and small outposts, and the building upkeep would be a complete zero. Unfortunately, I don't remember how the decay system used to work back then, or if it was even in the game, but I'm sure it was practically impossible to raid the base like that. Another funny thing about the old Rust is how insanely unbalanced it was. While clans were able to build huge castles that were impossible to raid, solo players could lose their base to just a naked guy with a torch. Back in the day, you could destroy a wooden foundation with just a torch. I mean, not from the inside, by soft-siding it, but from the outside, just by hitting this foundation with a torch. I think we should thank the developers for removing this feature. Next, we have a third-person view. Before, you could press the F3 button to switch from the first-person view to the third-person view, and this feature was available on all servers. Most players liked this feature, but for some reason, the developers decided to remove it. Next, we have pillars for stability and these insane build-outs or extensions to get on the roof of other players' bases. Now, to increase the stability of your base, you simply place a wall frame. But in the past, there was a separate building block for this, called a pillar. You could place them on the sides of the foundation or right in the middle. This made it possible to build insanely tall build-outs to jump onto the roof of an enemy base. Back then, the building zone around the TC used to be different and didn't work in the air. Plus, there weren't any ladders in the game, so the only way to get on the roof was to build these huge extensions. Also, back then, if you fall from a height or get into a trap, your character will start screaming. That was the funniest thing ever added to the game. Next, we have the night vision and video settings. Before, Rust was actually playable during nighttime without any night vision goggles or flashlights. All you had to do was set the gamma to maximum in the NVIDIA settings, and you could see just as well at night as during the day. And the last thing from the old Rust that all players miss is the M92 pistol. At one point, the M9 didn't have a limit on how many shots per second you could do, which means you could spray that gun like crazy fast. So this little pistol was even better than AK. If this was still a thing, I'd be using the M9 all the time. Finally, let's move on to the current Rust. And trust me, there are so many things that every OG Rust player misses. For example, the old XP system. In my opinion, this was the prime Rust, and if the developers combine this old XP system with new blueprints and workbenches, the game will be way more balanced and enjoyable to play. The goal of the XP system was to bring a complicated experience and skill system into the game. This changed how players unlocked items and moved through different stages of the game. For example, to craft a bow, you had to reach level 7. This was achieved by earning XP points, which could be earned simply by playing the game, farming barrels, stones and trees. The XP system made it impossible for players to craft an AK in the first hours after the wipe, because it was simply impossible. In my opinion, the game was way more balanced during that time than it is now. Another component of the game that we all missed is the old Recoil. The 2022 combat update essentially removed all skill ceilings with gunplay inside of Rust by reducing recoil. Veterans who had trained Recoil for hundreds of hours were insanely upset, because now all you need to do is just pull the mouse down and to the left. But before this update, the recoil was insanely difficult to control. Next, we have the old safe zones. In the past, you were able to kill other players in safe zones and even loot them, so it was a paradise for grabs and reds. However, this gaming mechanic was quickly fixed, because it was too broken. Another broken meta from those days was the heavily armored horse. You could hop on a horse, put on a heavy helmet, a heavy chest plate, and heavy pants, equip your horse with metal armor, and dominate the entire server, because it was impossible to kill you. I can't even imagine what would happen to the game if there had been a shield back then. I think it would be a complete madness. By the way, since we're on the topic of transport, I'd like to mention that Copters used to spawn in random places next to the roads all over the map. So if you were lucky enough to find a copter at the beginning of the wipe, you could be the first to fly to the oil rig or any other monument. And finally, I want to remind you about the dome jump and the launch site jump. Not so long ago, we were able to bypass all the keycard puzzles and get the best loot from the launch site, just by using a parachute. Unfortunately, this feature was in the game for just a few weeks, but it was really fun. And the dome jump? Well, we all hated it, so I don't think there's anyone who really missed it. I think I've covered almost all the best items, features and gaming mechanics in Rust history. Of course, I definitely forgot something, and there are probably things I didn't even know about. So, if I didn't mention a specific item or game mechanic, please write about it in the comments below. Maybe I'll make one more video on this topic. And if you want to know even more about Rust, then in this guide, I'm gonna give you 25 things that every solo player needs to know in Rust to survive longer, win more fights, and outsmart other players.